Hello and welcome to another CCS Alumni Live. I'm Brandy Keither, the Assistant Director of Admissions at the College for Creative Studies, an art and design college located in Detroit, Michigan. And CCS Alumni Live is a conversation series where we talk with graduates from the College for Creative Studies about their journey from high school to career. And I'm really excited because today we are speaking with a graduate from our Craft and Material Studies program, Melissa Mytty, and hopefully I'm pronouncing Melissa's last name right. But before we add Melissa to the call today, I'm going to read her bio. The whole purpose of CCS Alumni Live is for you to understand these different artist journeys, but also have your questions answered. So if you have questions along the way, make sure you drop them in the chat box. So let me go and read today's guest's bio. Melissa Mytty was born and raised in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan. She received her BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in ceramics from CCS in 2005 and her MFA, so her Master's in Fine Arts in Ceramics from Cranbrook Academy of Art in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, back in 2007. She then moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to be a resident artist at the Clay Studio, where she worked from 2007 to 2012. Mytty's work focuses on the vessel format created by hand building techniques of pinching and coiling. And she's intrigued by combinations of patterning, such as the play of polka dots juxtaposed by prints, reminiscent of elegance and formality. Melissa has exhibited nationally and is currently living and working out of her studio in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. So without further ado, I will add today's guest to the live so we can get started. There we go. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Awesome. I'm well. I see you have some of your work in the background behind you.
Yeah, I'm in my studio right now.
Nice. I know that must be a wonderful thing to have in a time like this with a pandemic, that you can still access your studio and create without a hitch.
Totally. Yes, I've really appreciated that.
Yeah. So tell us, let's start off with where you currently are in your journey as an artist. Tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing as an artist. So you have your own studio. Do you work for yourself? Do you sell to specific vendors? What does work look like for you these days?
So I work in my studio when my kids are napping or sleeping, and every spare second I can squeeze in. So I make primarily functional artwork. So cups, mugs. This is an example of the style I'm doing currently. So I actually sell a lot through my own shop, which I like because I have agency over how I promote my work and how I get the steady flow of income. I also work with galleries, but galleries take a huge percentage. So it's it's a challenge, but without them, I can't survive. Kind of we help each other. So I want to keep working with galleries that I believe in. And so then I also work with a wholesale platform, fair.com. So I designed a line of dinnerware, which I sell almost exclusively through fair.com, which is retailers buy that stuff and have it in their brick and mortar shops. So I'm just trying to diversify my income streams, and that it's not all contingent upon my shop or the galleries or whatever, so that it can all come together and make sense. Because as my daughters transition to a school full time, I want this to be my full-time job, and I just needed to make sense financially. So making those numbers make sense,
Definitely understand. I feel like that's something I've heard a lot from different entrepreneurs, regardless of industry, that you need to have multiple income streams. You have to have some, something that's working for itself in the background, something that you have control of, something where you have so that's really interesting to hear that from a ceramic standpoint. Now, you talked about doing wholesale work, but obviously your work is very unique and individualized. I was looking at some of your process work on Instagram here, and I'm you're painting each of those individual dots. So when you're doing wholesale work, is it is it mass produced? Is it still custom pieces, and it's, the things that customers get are different for each set? How does that work?
Yes, everything's handmade and everything is a little different because I don't use molds. I use just like a banding wheel and form everything individually. So there are some like nuances in each form, but for the most part, like the plates stack and the bowls will stack, but there is some wiggle. But I think people that are buying my work appreciate that aspect of it. So I actually just had to put my wholesale account on like sleep mode because I'm fully booked to May. So
Oh, wow.
it's like it's a balance to figure out because like when I'm not busy with my own shop, it's nice to get a fair order, but when I'm so busy and I'm able to pump out those one of a kind pieces, that's really where my heart and soul is. And then I don't feel like I'm coming to work. I just come to my studio and I'm not like, this has to be orange, this has to be blue, this, you know what I mean? It's like a different vibe. And I need to have that creative flexibility. Like at the end of the day, I put my kids to bed at 7:30. I need to want to come out here. And so I keep it fresh, like finding that balance.
Yeah, I feel like that's a theme that's come up in a lot of conversations with the artists that we've talked to on Alumni Live who also have their own business or they work for themselves. There's that balance of like, what is my actual studio practice or the work that I create for myself, or what do I do to like keep myself creative and sane while I'm doing these things that need to be done,
Right.
I really appreciate that you're mentioning your kids and parenthood as much as you are, because I'm a recent member to the parenthood crew.
Yes,
My daughter's not 2 yet, and it's fascinating to me what parenthood requires. And so I guess the question I have for you is like, as an artist, like, do you feel like being a parent has caused you to have to adjust how you look at your practice as an artist or your business as a creative entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a really great question actually, because prior to having my oldest will be 5 next month. So prior to having her, I was actually making like um really not practical work, more sculptural, sometimes functional cups, but I would spend so much time glazing them. It would put it out of an attainable price point. So after I had her, I quit all my jobs. I was stringing together contract jobs. I was working nights and weekends, teaching in public or in a private school. And then, just like the hustle was real. So my husband and I decided I would just stay home and we would have that continuity in our life. Because at that time, pre-COVID, he was traveling so much. So we couldn't, I just couldn't have that schedule. So I did a complete 180 and I almost completely stopped making sculptural work and changed my mode to be all functional work. The price point would be, I guess my work's still like pricey if you compare it to like some like commercially fabricated things or whatever, but it's like a fine line, right? So so I only make functional work now for the most part, and then these like flat tile paintings behind me, which are just like I just like love to get lost in. But the pots are more attainable, and that's how I make my money now. So I do get really lost in it, like I'm working on this commission right now, and like you can see like I get totally lost in it. So, yeah. So it's just like a lot of painting on my pots, and then I have that like the process of making my sculptures, like the weird shapes, I now just like put them on my pots. So it's kind of like figuring out that balance again. Like the pot has to work because people like plates that function, and but then I can be crazy with the surface, or just to find that balance towards like what's going to work in the market. This isn't, my husband is so much more practical than me, and he has a background in business. So it's been really helpful for me to have him as a sounding board to help me with numbers and all of that. Also because I am an entrepreneur kind of, I guess. I still have that caveat, kind of. But I didn't take one business school like ever in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like figuring all of everything out. It helps to have a business person to bounce
Mindset.
things off of.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing that's come up a few times in Alumni Live too, is that we have some of our alumni, historic, amazing alumni, and it was before CCS came up with the entrepreneurial program, which we have now. So we have an entrepreneurial studies
Oh,
concentration.
really?
Yeah. So it was, obviously there's a demand for it. You know, we have so many alumni who are industrious and want to work for themselves and have their own vision for their creative businesses. And now CCS is like, okay, we have those skills. We can connect you to the industry. But if you want to work for yourself, like, here are these skills, you know, so how to brand yourself, money management for artists and designers. Like, that stuff is here now. But I hear so many stories as soon as we're like, or graduates, I'll say, of like, I had to figure it out. So
Yeah.
I definitely understand that the importance of like knowing these things about business in addition to your craft.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to hear you talk about how you incorporate some of the things you were doing, you know, for your sculptural work, or, you know, primary to parenthood, how you're still bringing some of that creativity and exploration into the functional work, right? Because I think that's a conversation that, not I think, I know it's a conversation I have a lot with students who are interested in the craft and material studies disciplines, of like, well, you know, how practical is it that I can do 100% my work? You know, how much of it has to be functional, or how much of it has to be for industry? And, you know, the answers vary from person to person, but I love that you have experience with various elements. You know, you have work in galleries, you also have work that's functional, you know, for wholesale. That's really
Yeah.
cool to hear.
Yeah, it's just recent that my shift has been primarily the sales coming through my own site. And like, I'm not like waiting on a check from the gallery, you know, that's
Right.
just like kind of like bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's been a shift recently in my business, which has been really nice. So I just like having the agency over myself, and I'm fine with working. It just needs to be like on my my schedule for my family. But I love working, and I'm not like okay if I'm not working. You know what I mean?
I understand.
I'm the kind of person that needs to create. I need to work. That's how I'm like the most well-rounded human possible.
Mm-hmm. So are you, and this is always a fun question, are you someone who's in your studio every day or creating something every day?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't miss a day. I couldn't even tell you the last time I took a day off. Not even on Christmas. I don't know. It's just, and it's nice because it's right here. It's like my house is like just like 50 feet that way. So I just put my kids down, I run out here, and then my husband watches the kids for me on Saturdays, so I can be in my studio all day.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
love seeing stories of alumni, creative people who are doing what they love all the time. It's awesome. So we've talked a little bit about what you're doing now in your career and these different income streams and business versus gallery versus all these things. I want to take it a little bit back in my little magical time machine to who you were as a high school artist. And learn a little bit about you then, because obviously that led to who you are now. So tell me, when you were in high school, did you know you wanted to do ceramics as your career?
That's a good question. So I was really interested in ceramics, and I was really fortunate that I went to Farmington High School, which has, or I don't know what their program looks like currently, but back in the day, Gail Peipenberg and Nina Weiss were there, and they were really wonderful. I mean, I can't even tell you, like, they let me take clay home. I was working at my kitchen table till 2 o'clock in the morning. My mom had to like shout at me, like, go to bed, kid, like, go to bed. So I should have known that I was going to do ceramics, but I didn't. And I actually left high school and went to Michigan State for a year and majored in criminal justice.
Oh, wow.
So then I felt like a piece of me was missing because I didn't have that ceramics. So that's when I applied to transfer from Michigan State to CCS because I wanted to have like that community around me. And that was pretty much the best decision I ever made because everything, like I had a really wonderful experience at CCS. It was like more the size of my high school, which I thought I wouldn't like. However, people knew my name, and I had a ton of friends, and like the ceramics community became my home. And so that I just had to make a little mistake before I got there.
I mean, it's all part of the journey, right? Everyone's journey has something that is not what we expect, but it's part of the story, right? So
Yeah.
tell me this, when you were making the decision to go to Michigan State for criminal justice, despite the 2 a.m. clay sculpting at your kitchen table, what influenced that decision? What made you think that that would be the first step in your path after high school?
So I really wanted to go into the FBI. But so that was why I went to criminal justice. And I don't have anything besides that. My mom knew that it wasn't the best for me, but I didn't know. She like knew better than me at that point, but I just had to figure it out.
So this is might be a strange question, but something I talk a lot to students about is this concept of ikigai, or all the things that we love and the impact we want to have on the world, and like finding a way to have those things meet and come together. Is there any aspect of like that interest in the FBI or like law or any of those things? Does any of that play into your work or things that you explore now in life?
Probably not. I'm so glad with the current state of the politics that I didn't choose that.
True.
But then I'm like, would it have been better? Because I feel like I have a strong moral compass. But I don't know. I still kind of think I should go into politics, but that's just a whole different aspect of who I am, I guess. I don't know. I'm just really interested in politics, but I'm kind of glad that that's not there's so
your
much
day in, day out
right now. I just can't. I like to be alone. I like working alone. I like not relying on any other people to make my work successful. So those things, because like I've hired people just randomly and occasionally to help me out, but I don't mind having other people around, but I also just don't mind sitting out here for hours by myself.
I feel like that's an important thing to it's something I think a lot of us learn about ourselves, like as we experience it, like as we step into our careers, what does and doesn't work. But that's a conversation I have with a lot of students. You know, they may say, I want to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, do you like working in teams? And I'm like, no. I'm like, well, that probably is not what you want to do, you know, or vice versa, you know. Well, you know, being a freelancer or entrepreneur, you're oftentimes like working for yourself. Like, yes, you may work with a client here and there, or you may, you know, toss things off at someone or work at a co-working space, but like a majority of your time, you're making your own decisions. You like having all the control and say in the final. And they're like, no. I'm like, well, okay, maybe we want to think about, you know, your path has to be in alignment with not just what you love to do, but like how you like to be, the environments you like to be in. Yeah. So it's a lot of things to factor when it comes to, you know, choosing the best path.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you stuck with ceramics, because your work is amazing. As I was going to share some work yesterday, I always try and share a few examples of alumni work each week. And I was like, I literally will end up sharing your whole Instagram feed. So
thank you so much. That's so nice to hear.
It's so awesome.
Thanks.
So you said you came to CCS, you enjoyed the community, you found that piece of yourself that was missing when you were at Michigan State. Did you consider any other art schools when you were looking at art schools, or was it just CCS you knew?
Because I grew up so close to CCS, I knew that CCS had the reputation I was looking for. Because like my mom would always talk about it, like that's a really good school, and one of her friends had graduated like years ago, so it seemed like a natural fit. So I didn't really branch out much then.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. It's just something I'm always curious about.
I actually I remember meeting with my admissions counselor when I came to tour there, and she introduced me to the concept of slip casting, which was the ceramic process I hadn't been familiar with, because in high school we did like wheel throwing and hand building, coil building, but no slip casting. So I remember meeting with her and being like, oh, there's so much to learn. I can't wait to be here, you know? So
That's awesome. That's super awesome to hear. And I think that's one thing that's interesting to just see through the eyes as an admissions counselor, like how much there is in each of the disciplines. And I think as a high school artist, like what we may be exposed to, we think is, oh, we understand this. And then you find like, oh, there's 4 years worth of knowledge that I can go gain that's beyond what I already know about this field. Techniques I never heard of or programs I've never used. So that's awesome. So what would you say then was your favorite thing that you learned during your time at CCS?
My favorite thing I learned, well, probably glazing. Glazing with like Tom Fordell and Polka was a huge influence on me. I don't know if you know either of those people, but
I know Tom Fordell. Yeah, he's a legend.
So I think Polka gave me an assignment to use. I think it was 12 glazes on one pot. I still have the pot, and that changed my perspective of how glazing happens. And then I've just gotten into where I like brush. I'm like into like the crazy control, like, you know, how it's like, so that was probably my favorite kernel that's carried through with me.
And clearly had a huge influence on your art today. Yeah. That's awesome. That's so awesome. Now, I know something unique about you is that you also went and got a master's degree in ceramics. What made you feel that you wanted to go on and get a secondary degree in ceramics? Is that something that's common in the industry?
I think so. I think it was pretty common. Well, so I knew I wasn't ready for the real world. I knew that I still had some growing to do before I felt like I needed some extra school. And several of my colleagues had left CCS and gone to Cranbrook. And actually, Christian Tedeschi, who had graduated from Cranbrook, was teaching in ceramics when I was there. And he was also a huge impact on me. So that's what kind of like gave me the idea to continue. And studying with Tony Hepburn, who was there at the time, was really wonderful. And I'm glad I did it. I was like one of the younger people because a lot of people take time off before they go for their MFA. But I just went right for it. And I'm really glad I did because I can't imagine going back to school now. But I think Cranbrook was really good to give me that time to like sort of congeal and push. And then actually, you mentioned after I left Cranbrook, I went to be a resident artist at the Clay Studio in Philly. And that was also really wonderful because for the first time I was away from academia, but I still had a community studio. I think there was 12 artists on my floor. And they were all kind of just leaving graduate school in a similar type of place in life. And we were lucky enough to have rent free. So it kind of took the burden, a little bit of the burden off. Of course, there's living expenses, but it allowed me to be in my studio more. And then that's like when I started working with the Clay Studio and teaching there. And really, like, that's the organization I feel connected to here.
That's so awesome. And I know you mentioned earlier teaching as well. When you teach, do you only teach ceramics-based classes?
So now that's what I do, because beforehand I was teaching drawing and painting, and like when I was working full time before I had my daughter, my first daughter, and then ceramics is really for me. I love painting, I love drawing, and I can like fake my way through teaching it, but I really feel like ceramics is my thing. And like before COVID, I was teaching like private lessons here in my studio.
Oh, nice.
Like another
revenue stream. Yeah.
Yeah. So, ceramics is just for me.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I feel like it's cool that, you know, people can have the background and the skill sets to teach other things, but like when it's something you love, I feel like you're a better teacher at it, or teacher of that thing, because you're passionate, right?
Yeah.
I think of so many teachers at CCS where like there were subjects that I thought I wouldn't like, but because they loved them to death, I was like, you can't help but to enjoy this class and want
Yeah.
to learn.
You know
Yeah.
what's the funniest thing? So the biggest question I get is if I have a background in painting, and I'm
Because you
really,
paint so much with glazes.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but I never took one painting class. I feel like I really missed the boat. Like I never took one painting class. So that's like, I always wanted to be a painter.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought that would be so cool, but I never was like interested in that two-dimension. I mean, I messed around and stuff, but never seriously.
Yep.
So if I
Yep.
could go back to school, I would sign up for that painting class.
Well, you can always do continuing education classes. It's never
Yeah,
too late for that.
true. Yeah.
So I want to take a what were you gonna say?
I did take a lot of fiber classes. I think I'm like
Mm-hmm.
one class short of getting a minor in it, but I
Oh,
love
wow.
the process of batik and felting and that kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuff. I love fiber.
I could totally. I'm like, there's definitely like with how small your details are in the paintings of your ceramics, I could totally see how that would translate to some beautiful like fiber based. Oh my God, it'd
Yeah.
be so awesome. Yeah. I think it's cool too that the program is set up such that like yes, you have a focus, but through electives and some of the other opportunities in the major, you know, in the programs here at CCS, you can take classes in other areas, you know.
Yeah.
So like I have a vast appreciation for jewelers and metalsmiths. I don't think I'll ever be one, but like the ability to take a class where I was able to do that, I was like, oh, this is really fun, you
Yeah.
know. And it's cool that you know you're able to play with fiber and that form, but clearly still have your focus and grow your strengths as a ceramicist. But I wanted to take a quick break in my questions because I will ask them all day. And then we have people jumping in and out of the live. But I wanted to just check in with the folks who are tuned in. If any of you have questions about being a ceramic artist, about being an entrepreneur, about being a CCS student, about being a CCS alumni, make sure you drop those questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen here, because I want to make sure we take some time to have Melissa answer your questions, okay? So just throwing that out there. If anyone has questions, it's a conversation for all of us.
That's right.
Um, but until we get questions, I'll continue with some of mine.
Sure.
So this question I feel like is a huge question I'd like to ask each alumni that I talk to, because obviously this series, it engages a lot of people, but the purpose is to really show high school students and you know transfer students the different opportunities that exist and what these different journeys can look like, and just give them some words of wisdom from people who are, you know, further along in their journey. And so a question I have for you is, you know, knowing what you know now about your career, about your artist journey, about college, like if you were to go back and talk to your high school self, what advice would you give yourself about pursuing your creativity?
Take a business class. Yeah, for sure. Because I have the motivation and the drive to work. So creating the art is like not a problem,
Mm-hmm.
but the back end of stuff, I really kind of wish that I had a stronger platform to like draw from.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah. So like I said, my husband's been helpful because he went to school for business, but you know, my mom's always really helpful. She's more level-headed in that regard because I'm like, oh, I'll spend 100 hours on something, but then how much do you have to sell it for? You know, it's just like
Right.
they're always yelling at me I spend too much time on my work, but in order to be totally invested in it, you have to do like you can't shortchange yourself either.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine line. So I would just tell myself to probably read some books or take a class.
Yeah. That's great advice for someone who's working for themselves. Definitely take a business class. Um, it's interesting. A question that just came up in my mind based on what you're saying is like this balance between artist and business person, right? As a person who's working for yourself, what percentage of time would you say, like if you were to divide your business into percentage of time creating versus percentage of time like operating your business, what percentage would you give out of 100? Like, is it 50-50? Is it 70-30? Like, how much time is spent with the actual craft versus running the business?
It's probably 80% creating and 20% running, which is a great balance for me.
I was gonna say, that sounds like a good, yeah.
Yeah, I really don't mind. I box up and ship a lot of pots. So I spend a lot of time packing work after I have like a big drop to my shop. So it's just like getting in that rhythm. And then what I've realized about myself is I don't mind doing the computer work either, because it's like just giving me the whole experience, you know? So I do like all the computer stuff, but that's like it cycles through. So I could still be making stuff 80%.
That's a good percentage, because I think, you know, I've heard the fear of like, well, if I work for myself, like I have to do the bookkeeping, the emailing, like all the things. But hearing like 80% of it is still getting to create what you want. Those are good odds, you know?
Yeah.
Those are amazing.
Well, for me also, like, I don't have to physically be in my studio to do the other stuff. Like, I can be inside with my kids and like do a quick email or do like that stuff. That's not as you know, like physically, like I have to be here to make my work. So I actually like to feel like I'm being productive when I'm like doing other things. I don't know. Working in the schedule.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's so awesome. I love this. Like I have flexibility, but I'm still on call. I'm still working, you know, even when I'm doing other things.
Yeah. I watch my kids on that monitor while they're sleeping. So it's like, I can work and see my kids, make sure they're good, you know.
That's really cool. I need one of those.
Yeah.
That's a smart setup.
Yeah. Oh, my husband like set it all up for me, so it's good to go.
That's awesome. So one thing that you brought up when you were talking about your husband, your mom helping you with business, that sparked the question for me is like understanding our value as artists, our value as creators. And you talk about like the amount of time you spend on something versus like how much you need to charge to compensate yourself for that. Do you feel like, you know, once you started your business, you had a clear idea of like what your work was worth and what your time was valued as, or is that something that you learned along the way?
It's definitely been a journey. Yeah, it's definitely been a journey because like the price structure for my sculptural work was so different. And then like when I just like on a dime switched. You know, when you become a parent, something
So much
different
has to change.
And I am like, I need to provide for this kid. I need to show her my value outside of the home also, which I think is really important to teach kids that like mommy has a life other than them. And of course they're first and foremost. But anyway, so all that shifted and I had to restructure all of my pricing. So that was a huge shift. And that happened 5 years ago. So it's been kind of quick. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, but you know, also with that shift came new gallery relationships. And thank God for Instagram, because that's really given me agency over my own self-promoting, which was a huge thing for me to get over, like Instagram anxiety. Like I used to get so nervous every time I made a post because it almost feels like boastful. Like, look at me, look what I'm doing. So I had to get over that. And so I just kind of gave myself like the job. I had to post on Instagram once a day. You know, not every post is going to knock it out of the water, but you know, I've been able to gradually grow my my following. So along with my price structures kind of realigning itself, I've, figured all the other pieces out with it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I can imagine that would be a drastic switch. Like, this is the type of art I'm making, and this is that price point. Then, like, oh, I'm doing functional things now, and
yeah,
in a different capacity. Yeah, having to
yeah.
reevaluate that.
So like what I did when I made that switch, I actually documented how long it took me to make just like something like this from start to finish. Then like, okay, so now how much do I want to pay myself? And then like, and then go from there.
Yep.
Now, I'd probably still underpay myself, but my work, I don't want it to be more expensive than what it is right now. So, eventually probably I did like a $5 price increase this year, but it's inflation,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Business. I have a business, and it's just like the business part of it. I'm just like, just want to make the stuff. Like, I like some aspects of it, but like price points and like negotiating prices and contracts, not the most fun thing in the world. But it's wonderful to hear that you're increasing your prices. You've done the work to figure out your price point, and like you said, it's a journey, which all of this is. Like, all of doing what you love for a living and finding a way to make it work is always a journey, right? Especially when major things change in life, like becoming a parent or a pandemic or the both.
Right. During the pandemic, I guess it's still going on, but the extreme lockdown in March, I felt so lucky to have this studio here because we still didn't know so much about COVID. And then I could just come out to my studio, and it was like really nice.
And still create.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I checked, and I don't see that we've had several people jumping in and out here on Instagram. I see someone's shared some hearts for you. But I don't see any questions coming. Oh, someone says, Melissa, your prices have changed a lot over the past 10 years. Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah, that goes back to the whole like sculptural. So when I was making sculptures, they were still vessel based. So again, the same time when I had my daughter, I realized that I needed to have a steady income stream. Hi Dominique. It's a lot easier to sell a pot for $65 than $600. So when I was making sculptures for like, between like $300 to $1,200, say you sell one a month, you can't live off that. No. But you sell a lot more. I wouldn't say I'm selling a lot, but comparatively, then the income stream's actually like more predictable. And I also want people to be able to afford my work. I mean, it's not so good if I just make pots and they sit in my studio. So at that time when I had Willow, I just restructured everything. So did I answer the question fully?
It seems like you did. It seems like you answered. Hopefully that answered Dominique's question. Were there any other questions about being a ceramic artist or an entrepreneur or a CCS alum?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, she said that answered her question. Awesome.
So is CCS back in in-person learning?
So we never stopped in-person learning, actually. When the pandemic happened, because we're so small, we were able to, obviously when there was a shutdown, like when no one could leave the house, we were remote. But a lot of that was during the summer, right? So when the school year actually started, we were able to have a hybrid model. So students were able to still get into the studio and create, but then their general education classes were online. Then they would do part-time, some of their, studio lecture-based stuff online. But yeah, students are still in person, living on campus, as safe as possible, but we still have in-person school. Yeah, it would be pretty impossible to be a ceramics or glass artist and not be able to get in the studio. It'd be pretty difficult. Another amazing question just came in. Who has been some of your mentors that have helped you?
That's a good question. It's funny because Dominique is a contact person at the Clay Studio, which
Oh,
is
nice.
the studio where where I was a resident. And I was working with her in the front gallery. So she knows a lot about my work. So I would say all of my teachers were really, really incredible, which would be Paul Catula, Christian Tedeschi, Tom Fardell, which would be the CCS crew, and then Tony Hepburn. He was just an amazing human being and taught in so many different ways. And so those people really helped me grow and develop to become an artist, a professional artist. So those are the names that I'd like to drop.
Some amazing names, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Melissa, this has been so wonderful to learn about your journey from high school to career, some of the twists along the way.
Yeah.
How you've adapted and adjusted, and how you're still able to day in and day out create and make art. It's really wonderful to see it. This is my first time meeting you, and I'm just like, you're so wonderful. I'm really glad that you agreed to do the CCS Alumni Live.
Well, I just want to thank you for reaching out to me, because it feels so nice to be connected to CCS, which is a school that I feel so connected to. And I had, like I said, such a great adventure while I was in school there. I hope that this was informative for some of the prospective students. And if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to me on Instagram.
Yes, that's always the last part of Alumni Live for me. Is very important to plug where people should follow you, where they should go to look at your work and support your continuing your journey as an artist. So on Instagram here, it's just at Melissa Mytty. Did I say your last name right?
Mytty, Melissa Mytty.
Mytty. Oh, it's so much easier. Melissa Mytty. I love that. That's really cute. So follow at Melissa Mytty. Is there anywhere else where people should follow you and check out your work, your website, anything else?
My website is melissamytty.com or melissamyttyshop.com. The shop, if you want to see like the breadth of what I do, melissamytty.com. If you are interested in purchasing, melissamyttyshop.com. It's pretty thin pickings right now, but I'll have another drop here in 2 months or so.
Awesome. I know that I heard you say you hope that some high school students will be inspired, but I know that they will, because I know there's a kid out there who's at their kitchen table at 2 a.m. working on their clay.
Yeah, definitely.
And will benefit from hearing your journey and your story. I also want to do a quick plug before we wrap today. If you are interested in craft and material studies, ceramics, fibers, glass, any of the craft disciplines, metalsmithing and jewelry making, or furniture, we actually have an upcoming event specifically for students interested in this field called Major Insights. It's taking place February 9th. It'll be a Zoom event, so you can watch it from home in your pajamas, where you get to meet with some of the amazing faculty here at CCS to talk more about how you can start your own journey like Melissa. So make sure you check out the CCS website or our Craft and Materials Studies Instagram for information on that. I'll post some of that in my story after this as well. Melissa, thank you so much for sharing your time and your journey and your wisdom and your insights. And I just want to thank everyone else who's tuned in. Please check back next week. We'll have another Alumni Live next week, and we'll see you then.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Brandy. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.